Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. This is a quite interesting modeler because it is the McLaren F1 GTR, and it is not the usual build-up that you can find usually from a Fujimi, or even better from the long tail GTR version of the provided by Aoshima 1/24 scale. This was a kind of back in the day kit that I had in my store. I had a modeling store in Milano for nearly 15 years, and I closed the shop in 2012, and this was a kind of unsold item that I had in my shop. At the time, consider that we are talking at the end of the 90s, beginning of the year 2000, there were no plastic kits available on the market about the McLaren F1 GTR, the race version. It was McLaren was a project that they made in the late 90s, in the middle 90s, sorry, for a stradale version, for a street car, extremely performing. It was incredible because she featured a central driving position for the driver with two side passenger seat, left and right. So the disposition was exactly like a real racer, like a Caterham, like a Formula One model. And the designer of this model was Gordon Murray, that was probably, together with Adrian Newey, probably the greatest racing engineer that never existed over race car. Plus, the manufacturing was made by McLaren. We say the engineering was from Gordon Murray, and the power unit was coming from BMW. So BMW, in Italiano we say BMW, featured the wonderful V12 engine, ultra powerful, naturally aspirated, so it was not a turbo car. And the car was absolutely winning and performing. There were several chassis, all of them extremely famous. The model from Profil24, it is surely something that the guy, Jean-Philippe, I think is the name of the guy from Profil, made it in the 90s, because you will find in the floor base of the model a signature from him that is dated 1995. Instead, in the upper version, probably I think Profil wanted to convert this full detail model that they made in the 90s with something to feature different liveries in 2004, and the body shall have a signature up that is Jean-Philippe Boyer 2004. So I think that it was a kind of updating of a previous existing kit. The problem of the model is that it shows probably the weight of the age, and mostly, of course, if today you want to go for a build of this type of model, I absolutely suggest you to search for a Fujimi model. Fujimi are constantly inside of the market, outside of the market, out of production, in the production, so you have to be a little bit lucky when you search for such model. I know that currently, 2025, the models from Fujimi are not so easy to find around. Plus, if you go for the assembly of the Fujimi model, they all have the same mistake. Also this model have, but of course here is a little bit different because it's a racing kit, so racing artisanal kit, so we are in that type of field. It's not an ordinary plastic kit. But all this model have the problem of the wheels. These, for example, are the wheels provided originally from Profil24, and these instead are the wheels provided by the KMP guy that make a wonderful set, I guess dedicated to the Aoshima or Fujimi kit, because mysteriously they provide a very well and detailed hub with the brake, with the steel brake, carbon ceramic brake, surely not steel. But the point is that it don't provide the claw of the brake, so you don't have that golden claw for the brake system. So I used there a very nice part coming from the Profil kit. What is absolutely unacceptable from the kit, and you probably can see from this image, is the detail and the dimension, because this wheel is extremely smaller than the one provided by KMP. So my tip is absolutely to go for any model that you want to do, to buy the KMP set. There is also other guys that provide the set in Calc 3D, so you just search for McLaren F1 GTR wheels, and there is a lot of details, mostly because this was the biggest mistake. In the Fujimi kit, the mistake is not referred to the wheels himself, but it's referred to the height of the model, because probably they just converted the street version that remains too high. These race cars constantly were completely like blades on the ground, so they were extremely glued to the ground. So it's important that the final setup and the final overlook is completely like a low rider, so it have to be completely low on the asphalt, and never too high. It's not a street car, you know. The model required several updates. Of course, the obvious stuff like opening all the air intake in the front and in the back. I am waiting that the gloss varnish became completely dry, so that's why I use a glove, and I don't want to leave any fingerprints over the model. As you can see, all the air intakes I had to open, you know, both in the rear bumper, both in the upper side, both of the side of the car. There is a bigger one and the smaller in the other side, plus of course all the 8 opening over the front wheel before going to coat and to apply the decal. The decals are coming from Indicals. Indicals is an American guy, Michael, that works very good about decals, and of course they are kind of artisanal decals, so you have to cut them by your own, but this is not a problem because it's much better when you have big decals like this one or this one to divide it in small pieces so you can apply and see if something is not matching to your model. Surely this type of decals have been designed for the Fujimi kit and not for the Profil24 kit. I think Profil made completely by their own a car with this decal, I think, because I honestly never seen it. But I wanted really to use the Indicals decal. Indicals, search for it on Google for it, and you will find a lot of versions if you are lucky. And I love it so much to have the versions of the car featuring flag. You know, this have the American flag. There was the sister car that was, I think, the number 38 featuring the British car, you know, so the tail was a little bit bigger in the blue side. The blue is of course a Gunze Sangyu color. Sometimes people in the comment ask what kind of product I use. I find myself extremely comfortable to work with Gunze Sangyu color, both the enamel feature and the acrylic feature, as well as the gloss is always the GX100 coming from their range, because it is the only kind of a gloss that give a realistic glossy to the vehicle without giving the candy effect that too many models, even more in 24 scale, have. Maybe the 2K, the famous 2K. I have a big tank of Leclerc 2K. It's a 3 component because you have the resin, the catalyzer and the thinner for it, so you have to mix 40 30 30, and it's not so particular to use, you know, kind of mythical, the 2K, but it's extremely easy because it's extremely sensitive to the weather condition, you know. Right now here I am working in Sweden. The temperature is plus 4 degrees. It's completely cloudy and humid, it's foggy, so it's really sensitive to the humidity of the room you are working in. And that's why I think it's much more easier and better to work with something much more modern like the GX100. It's an enamel, and the trick is always to work to thinner it with the self-leveling thinner, even provided by Gunze. Self-leveling thinner is something that saves you in every condition, because depending from the coat you apply on the model, it makes it straight and it becomes, you see, completely glossy in a very realistic way. So I like it a lot to work with this type of products, you know. As I said before, to modify this version, this was the Profil24, referring to the 95 car. This car basically raced in important events like the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 95, 96 and 97, being constantly a winning car, so it was constantly performing extremely well for timing and so on. Remember that at the time the 24 Hours Le Mans was not as big as together with the C Group series, and not as big as today it is with the VEC and the WSC series, you know, so it was still a GT1, GT2, still a GT3 didn't exist, you know. And so this was in the category of the first GT1, but honestly they didn't have so many big competitors. There was constantly the updating of the previous season of Porsche C Group, modified by Dauer, modified for the new rules and so on, but it was a car coming from the racing specs of the 80s, so this was extremely much more performing and much more easy to see in the upper part of the classification at the final of the race. Plus the final livery. This was the Italian car. I think the other one was, I think, or the French car, the number 38. So they are different crew. I think this was probably the Team Bigazzi car, also famous because it was also driven by our Roberto Ravaglia, even if not in this race. See, this was driven by Cecotto, sorry, Nelson Piquet and Denny Sullivan. So it was the American one. The other one had the Union Jack livery on the back. The last stuff that I have to finish here, we are nearly going to the complexion, you know, is of course to paint in black the interior side. All the interior should be made in carbon fiber, but you don't see so much in this GTR. I made a part of carbon fiber, mostly in the parts that you can see from the windows, but it's not so much, you know. As well as for the engine, there is just something that you can barely see. I just left the decal with McLaren. In theory, you know, the Profil24 also provide you the photo etched set for some details, but if you don't see so much in their part, it's nearly not worth it to use them, because it's really a waste, you know. So I would just apply the final transparent part. The still is a little bit challenging because you have to give a shape, you know. In the model, give me 1 second and I will show you. In the model of Profil, this is what they provide, like a transparent part. It can be a little bit scary for modeler, because you have basically to cut everything here in the proper dimension, you know, but it's usually fits. So you basically have the rear glass for the was plexiglass in reality for the engine, the side windows that have to be cutted, and the front light that have to be cut. For this I made some dimes, so I hope that everything match well. And of course you have to paint the black side of the window, the black frame of the window from the inside. So this is a little very visible detail at the end of the model. And then of course cut it in the most precise way ever. Remember, this is a not returning point of this model, so you have to be extremely clean and precise when you do this type of job, otherwise you will mess it up completely, everything with the final look of the car. Last but not least, as I said, to modify the version from a 95 to a 96 car, not only you have to add this type of vents that the car featured, but you also have to make the enlargement of the front wheel arch and a bigger and longer lip in the front, you know, as well as the 95 car has the reducer on the air intake down there. I hope that you can see well. There was a reducer in the front end of the air intake, so when I completely drilled the front air intake, I also took away the reductions on the air intake for that Harrods car that this BMW didn't, this Fina car didn't have. And that's it. Basically the main difference. Then arrived with the 97 version. It was the longer tail to increase aerodynamics and performance. Much nicer car in my opinion, but this was much more particular. I made back in the day the 97 car that I gave to a friend, and I have no regret of it. Of course I took the Aoshima model that is really like to eat a lobster compared to what I'm eating here, and you know what I mean with this type of anyway production by Profil24. So not so bad. I just hope that we can take it to a decent end and make a nice model with it. So that's it. Stay tuned and see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.